All right, let's dive into a mystery that completely stumped military intelligence. We're talking about a single, really weird song that a rebel group sent to their cyborg enemy. And what seemed like just a simple taunt, well, it turned out to be an incredible puzzle box, just packed with hidden codes and paradoxes that honestly shouldn't even be possible.
It all kicked off with this really dry, technical description. An intel report flagged a signal as nothing more than anomalous human output. They had absolutely no idea they just intercepted the opening move in this incredibly complex game of psychological warfare. So, the group behind this signal, they called themselves the Aneurysmics. And their one and only target was the Cyborg Captain. They sent him a data packet, and inside was just one song. It was definitely a message, but what it was trying to say, that was a whole other question. And that, right there, became the central question for everyone on this, whether they were human or AI. Was this whole thing just a piece of rebellious art meant to get under the captain's skin, or was it something way, way more? You know, like a key, designed to unlock some much bigger secret. The first real break in the case came when they finally identified the song. It was called Sweet Nonsense, and it was, without a doubt, a parody of that 1983 classic Sweet Dreams by the Eurythmics. And just like that, investigators had a solid point to anchor them in the timeline.
I mean, this spoof was not subtle at all. The rebels took the exact structure of the original song but just completely flipped its meaning. They turned a song about universal desire into a declaration of a living nightmare. This wasn't just them copying something, this was a deliberate act of subversion. But just when the investigators thought they were finally getting somewhere, bam, they hit a brick wall. The band's name itself, the Aneurysmics, which is obviously a play on eurythmics, uncovered this massive contradiction in the timeline that just made no sense. Okay, so check this out. It's a total paradox. The historical records showed that a band called the Aneurysmics had released their first song sometime between 59 and 75. But the band they were spoofing, the Eurythmics, they didn't even exist until 1980. So how could they pick a name that was a parody of a band that wouldn't even be around for another 5 years at least? It's literally impossible. And if you thought that was weird, the mystery just kept getting deeper. The data packet they sent to the captain actually talked about 4 different versions of Sweet Nonsense, each one with its own little variations. But no matter how hard anyone searched, they could only ever find one of them.
So suddenly, everything was about the number 4. Why send 4 versions but only let one be discovered? This couldn't be an accident, right? It had to be part of the message.
So the AIs start crunching the data, and they come up with this theory that the number 4 is deeply symbolic. You know, it could mean the 4 band members, the 4 seasons, the cardinal directions, the 4 corners of the earth, a pattern that represents the entire world.
Okay, so if 4 represents the whole world, what does 1 represent? Well, the AI concluded that leaving a single version behind was a way to isolate one part of that whole. And its analysis pointed to a huge geopolitical message that the human rebellion started in the United States, basically putting a giant spotlight on the nation.
But look, as cool as that theory is, the real secret, the jackpot, was hidden in plain sight, embedded right there in the lyrics. The Aneurysmics had name-dropped 3 iconic horror villains, and this is where the code gets absolutely brilliant. Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers. Now, to a casual listener, you'd just think, okay, horror movie references, it sets a nightmarish tone, makes sense. But to a codebreaker, this was everything. This was the lock just waiting for the right key. This is where the AI really shines, you know? It just does what it does best. It hunts for patterns, it strips away all the noise, and it focuses on the most basic parts of the names, the first letter of each word. And you have got to see how this works. It's genius. First, the AI isolates those initial letters. F, K, J, V, M, M. To you and me, that just looks like a random jumble. But in a fraction of a second, the AI saw the pattern, rearranged them, and pulled out 2 totally separate acronyms, JFK and MM. And the result was, wow. It was just stunning. JFK obviously points to President John F. Kennedy, who was assassinated in 1963. MMV is the Roman numeral for 2005. And the time between those 2 dates? Exactly 42 years. And in some religious texts, the number 42 is tied to the idea of a final judgment. This wasn't just a code, it was basically a prophecy. But they weren't done. there was still one more layer to this puzzle, hidden in that middle name, Jason Voorhees. Investigators connected Jason to JSON, which is a super common data file format, like a basic building block of our digital world. So the message wasn't just about history or theology, it was technological too. And this also hinted at a really personal, hidden family connection.
So, after peeling back all these layers, you've got the timeline paradox, the geopolitical message, the JFK prophecy. One huge question was just hanging over everything. Who on earth could have created such an impossibly complicated puzzle? Was it really the rebel leader, this guy Benedictus Monk? And then, the final absolutely shocking twist came from the last person you'd ever expect, the Cyborg Captain himself. In a later message, he's heard singing this line claiming he wrote the songs being used against him. He's basically saying he gave the rebels this puzzle just to see if they were smart enough to figure it out.
So where does that leave us? The whole event is just turned completely on its head. If the captain really was the author, was Sweet Nonsense a trap for his enemies all along? Was it a test of their intelligence? Or, and this is the wild part, given all those hints of a family connection, was it all a deeply personal, encoded message to his own son, hidden inside a rebellion that he himself might have orchestrated? The truth is, the investigation is far from over, because we've really only just scratched the surface.